Hi guys, we're doing session 13, which is the European Parliament and the Council of the EU and some other EU institutions as well. I think we're going to get to the European Central Bank too, only a little bit though. Okay, so this eye ache that is in front of us, this thing that looks like a child's creche cross between something else, I'm not sure, is the Council of the European Union. This non elected body, but is appointed, each member state of the European Union gets to appoint someone to the Council of the European Union. Excuse that noise next door. Along with the European Parliament, it makes key decisions and votes on new legislation. It is appointed by the national government, as I just told you. They sit in 10 technical councils, sometimes referred to configurations. The General Agricultural Council is probably the most important because that seems to be where the most amount of money seems to go in the European Union. These councils are like cabinets or portfolios, really. It wields considerable power. This is probably one of the more powerful institutions of the European Union, but very little public attention is paid to it. And a lot of the time, what it proposes and what it votes on seems to be very opaque. It meets a few times a year, normally for 1 or 2 days. Some ways it reminds me of the Diet of the Holy Roman Empire or the Polish Slatcha. I don't know why, but I have given you something to read on the Holy Roman Empire, I think, and something else, actually. But like I said, it only meets a few times a year. So there you go. It's appointed by national governments. It has 10 technical council. It's quite powerful. It only meets a few times a year for 1 or 2 days. The big work for the Council of Europe is done with the bureaucrats that it employs. Now, these guys liaise with the national governments back in their constituent countries, find out what these governments want at a European level, and then try and create legislation that can make that happen. And this committee that makes this happen is the Committee for Permanent Representatives, or COREPER. I know, it's not a good name. Okay, what about European Union law? So law that is crafted by the Council of Europe, or the European Union Council, sorry, and the European Parliament, it supersedes national law in the same way that federal law does in our country. Now, the foundations for these laws, the thing that these laws must abide by, is the European treaties. Now, there are several of them by now, but I suppose they all come together in one major treaty, which I suppose is the Maastricht Treaty of 1991. But the foundation of these laws are the treaties, and these laws supersede national laws. The law is imposed in a number of ways. First of all, there are regulations. These are narrow in scope, but very effective across the board in Europe and go into force by specific dates. So, whether it's changing your measurements to metric, or whether it's certain safety belt requirements, or whether it's minimum wages or something else like that, there are regulations or safety regulations or pollution regulations, and there is a certain amount of time built into the system to allow them to come into effect for people to catch up to speed to make any implementations they need to make it happen. Then there are directives, and directives are binding goals. So this might be one of the directives I remember was each of the member states will have 20% of its power met by renewable needs by 2000. And some of them actually made it. And those states that don't make it have to pay certain amounts of monies or have to have a certain amount of interference in. Decisions can be aimed at specific European states or even individuals. Now, this enormous thing here, which looks like something from Star Wars, is the European Parliament. It's massive. My brother-in-law, who worked for Nigel Farage of the United Kingdom Independence Party, I know, don't judge, said that he's seen votes pass in this place by just a show of hands. It seems hard to believe, but he says it's true. Anyway, this is the only part of the European Union that is directly elected. And it's unicameral. It's only one room legislature. It's not bicameral. There's not a House and Senate, or in like the UK, Parliament and Lords. Just unicameral. It has 751 members. It's located in three places: Luxembourg, Strasbourg, Brussels, places that border other countries in the middle, I would say. Most of the real work, as actually in our own democracy, is done by committee. And then once the bills are crafted and they meet the floor of the legislative hall, it's really just a matter of just yes or no. They cannot propose legislation. I think that's different for this body. It cannot propose legislation, although this is changing. It cannot raise revenue. Now, this is quite a hobbling point for a parliament. Now, the European Commission can, but remember, there is no direct European Union tax. It's just expected that each of the member states commits a certain amount of its budget to the European Union. The members who are elected have 5-year fixed renewable terms. Nobody knows who their member is. Honestly, it's the opposite of the American electoral system, where you might know who your representatives are at the federal level, particularly senators, but you never know who your local representatives are. But in the UK or in other, well, previously in the UK, but in member states, it's more often to know who your national members of parliament are or national members of legislature are, but not who your MEP is. It's chaired by a president. Every sort of body of the European Union has a president, hence George Bush II's joke, you guys sure have a lot of presidents, which is true. Nobody knows who the member is, but it's chaired by a president, who's elected from within the chamber to serve a 5-year renewable term. So what they do is very much like a prime minister, actually, in some ways, not a president, because they elect one of themselves, but the one that they elect must come from one of the majority parties in the legislature. Now, what about the institutions within the European Union? There is an absolute alphabet soup of them, hence the picture. The ECB is the one that is perhaps the most well known. That is the European Central Bank, and it's the most coherent about what it does. It does what central banks do, but a little bit more secretly. There are lots of other committees that oversee things, ranging from minority languages and regional development to common security and defence. A very justifiable criticism of these institutions is that they are often secretive, bloated, and unaccountable. And they are. It seems sometimes like a bit of favoritism, like, you've done something nice for one of your friends who's a member of the European Parliament, or a member even of the European Council, and he puts you on some nice little committee to go and stay in Brussels or Strasbourg and do a bit of work for them, just maybe on a light basis. And some of these committees don't seem to really do much or add up to much, but some have incredible importance, even to us in the United States, the ECB, for example. And here is the article if you wanted to read it, which we're not going to right now. Okay, the European Court of Justice. There are as many judges on the European Court of Justice as there are member states. It's certainly different from our Supreme Court, isn't it? Each state gets to nominate a judge, and it's the most underrated of the 5 European Union institutions. I think it's underrated by Europeans because they just don't know how important a Supreme Court is. It's something which has largely been not really talked about, I suppose, much. In the USA, we know how important the Supreme Court is. I think that's given. The court does not publish how it votes or its dissents. That's a major difference, isn't it? That is, to me, something fundamentally different. The purpose is exactly what you would expect a Supreme Court to do. Europeans don't seem to get this either. When cases and laws cannot be decided at any level, local and then regional and then even national, it can go to the biggest level it can, at least within the European Union, or like it can in the United States, which is the European Court of Justice, Central Court of Justice. Unlike ours, judges serve 6-year renewable terms, but They are appointed. National governments appoint the judges, and one third is up for appointment at any one time. So there's always two-thirds of the judges are seasoned veterans who know what to do. The judges select one of their own to be the president, rather like the parliament. Now, the court breaks its work up into component pieces. Most cases are heard in a committee of 3 to 15 judges. The cases have preliminary hearings with what's called advocate generals. These are essentially solicitors or lawyers, but advocate generals for this technical language of the European Union. And these guys will present the case to the AGs, or solicitors will present the cases to the AGs, and the AGs will make a ruling on it. And when the Advocate General makes that ruling, he brings that ruling, or she brings that ruling to the court to take into consideration. They often go into the court and see the judges without even the plaintiffs being there after the ruling has been made. And the court can take the Advocate General's ruling and agree with it, or they can completely ignore it and hear the case all over again. In 99% of the cases, they just take what the AG says as de rigueur, and they take it, so it's there. Today, the court hears about 200 cases a year, and verdicts can take as long as 2 years. I know. Oh, French remains the language of this court. It has not turned out to be English. It's one of the few European Union institutions where English has not turned out to be the language, although officially English is not the language in any of those. But the reason why I think French is because it's based on, I think, really civil code, not common law, and civil code is, for some of us, Napoleonic code. Okay, so the EU has institutions that are federal in character, but there is no elected president, or no elected president by the people. There is no European Union army. There is no European Union mail system. That is another way that it differs distinctly. Each of the member states of the European Union retains its own system of its own postal system. There is no European Union tax system. This really stops the European Union from becoming a big superstate, perhaps one of the biggest things to it. Membership in the European Union is voluntary. You can leave. Leaving is not secession. However, some states are moving more of their autonomy to the EU level. So we could say that, I suppose, increasingly, in 2 steps forward, 1 step back, there is more of a move to centralization at a European level, and the individual rights of the member states is receding to some degree. Okay, let's have a look at the quiz. And the quiz is here. Okay. So identify the European Union institution. It meets a few times a year. It is appointed by national governments, and it has technical councils. Well, it's certainly not the ECB. And we said the Parliament is elected, and it's only between the Court of Justice and the Council of the European Union. So we know it's got to be that one. Now, identify the European Union institution. It's directly elected. There can only be one institution that's directly elected. It cannot propose legislation, although that is changing. And members serve 5-year terms. It has to be the European Parliament. The European Court of Justice has to publish its rulings and votes. And we talked about this, and we said how weird it is, because we in America really do get to hear about what our justices say at the Supreme Court, but Europeans do not. And if we submit that, we get 3 out of 3. All right, gang, listen, you don't have to do the assignment that's on this page. Just do the quiz. I will leave this open for you. If you've got any problems or anything, knock me up on Zoom, and I will be pleased to speak with you. Other than that, have a lovely afternoon. Enjoy everything, and maybe I'll even see some of you at a hockey game. All right, guys, take care. Bye bye.